Hello and welcome to Mary's Nutrition Show, coming to you live from Seattle, Washington. Our mission here is to help you look better, feel better, and live better one meal at a time. And tonight's episode, Will Salt Kill Me? Salty Nutrition Myths and Facts. Now, here's your host, Integrative Registered Dietitian, Mary Purdy.
Good evening, Seattle, and everywhere else out there. Mary Purdy here, feeling extra salty tonight on this Tuesday evening. Welcome. I would like to introduce the man behind the camera, who also happens to be my husband, Keith Hitchcock of Hocus Pocus Media.
Hello out there. Glad to be here. Oh, Scott, I love salt too.
We're already getting those salty fans out there. And we are going to be talking about this very controversial, very charged conversation tonight around salt. You may have been hearing a lot of things. It has a pretty big reputation for being something that a lot of people think they need to avoid. So we'll be talking about facts about salt, myths about salt, and some salty alternatives that I think you're going to love. And you definitely want to stick around because I'm going to be talking about some issues around salt that may indicate that it's not quite as bad for you as everybody thinks. Don't tune out.
Now, if you listen to the audio-only version of this, the podcast, you will get to hear the real song and not me just singing it like that. So that's a little incentive for you to check out the podcast. Best place for that is iTunes.
All right, please consult your doctor or registered dietitian of your very own before implementing any of the recommendations from the show. And please also note that the content is not necessarily reflective of any of the associations with which I associate.
Yes, and please join the conversation. If you're watching live, you can do what Scott has already done and join put a chat in the right of the window. If you're watching after the fact and on YouTube, there is a comment section under it, and we love your comments and your questions there. We try to get to each and every one of those. So an FYI, there will be a dedicated Q&A section later on after the main course.
Always my favorite part.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mary, what was last week's nutrition challenge?
It was to take 3 different kinds of beans and put them in your diet during the week. Who did it? How'd it go?
Exactly. Did you try it? We would like to know. You can drop us a comment in the chat there, either live or recorded. We would like to know. I'm pleased to say that I accepted the challenge and I achieved the challenge.
Which beans did you have that I didn't know about?
Well, I had black beans.
Ooh.
I had white. Were they white beans in that spread?
They were white beans, cannellinis.
Cannellini. Mary made this spread. And then last night we had this really wonderful chickpea salad.
Yeah, really good.
3 different beans.
Excellent. You
Boom.
did it.
Thank you.
Success. You achieved it.
Do I get a prize?
You get more chickpeas tonight.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
That's a good salad.
Beans are the best prize ever.
Okay. And now for your main course.
All right. Main course, again, is salt. I'm going to be talking about 3 short points tonight about salt. Number 1. Are we ready? So, salt is necessary for human life. Sodium, which comes from salt, is an electrolyte that we need for numerous chemical reactions in our body. So while for some people it may cause issues, without it, we would basically not be able to survive. So we do need salt. And we need approximately, the guidelines recommend around 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day, which is about the amount that is in a teaspoon. Yes, a teaspoon contains around 2,000 milligrams. However, most of the people in America are getting around 6,000 milligrams. And so the argument is that salt can tend to increase your blood pressure, which can cause cardiovascular disease and put you at risk for things like stroke. Cardiovascular disease, that's heart disease. That's stuff you don't want. Like your grandfather died of a heart attack, that's what we're trying to avoid. And the reason why it does that is because your kidneys, these wonderful little organs, are there to filter your blood. And they do that by extracting the water from your bloodstream. And the way that they do that is through a seriously delicate dance that happens between sodium and potassium. Those are 2 minerals, both electrolytes. However, when there's too much sodium, that dance that helps the kidneys extract the liquid from your bloodstream doesn't work as well. And so that can cause your blood pressure to rise. So the idea is to have, of course, some salt in the diet, some sodium in the diet, but just not too much. Now, where do we get most of our sources of sodium, Keith?
Most sources of sodium come from food.
That's true. But in particular, processed foods, processed meats, processed canned foods, deli stuff, things that have been way oversalted in restaurants, your stuff that's at fast foods, junk food. That is really where we see a lot of high sodium. And very often, is it the salt itself, or is it the processed food and the other components of those foods that are detrimental to people's health? Hard to say. The thing is, it is true. For some people, salt does raise blood pressure. That isn't everybody, but there is a genetic component. That's right. I said a genetic component, meaning that some people are genetically predisposed to have salt content in their diet actually have a bigger effect on their blood pressure. And so for those people, they do need to be careful. However, point number 2.
Wait. Can I just say on point number 1?
Yeah.
I am so glad that I need to eat salt.
Well, you do need to eat it, but the question is, how much do you need to eat?
Okay.
That's where your doctor or registered dietitian comes in and talks to you.
Got you.
But back to point number 2. Now, there was a study that just came out in April of 2017 in the Journal of Experimental Biology, a very, very well-renowned journal, that looked at over 1,000 people for the course of 15 years and tried to determine whether salt intake or sodium intake raised their blood pressure. And you know what they found out? It actually didn't necessarily raise their blood pressure.
Really?
Yeah. And what they realized is that it is very often, or it may be more about the other foods or mineral sources that are deficient in the diet that have a positive impact on blood pressure, like potassium, magnesium, calcium, and that many people don't get a sufficient amount of those minerals in the diet. So it's not just a high intake of sodium, it is a low intake of those 3 very critical minerals for keeping your blood pressure in check, and all of which have a very, very important impact on health in general.
That is so. You're supposed to get low amounts of those. Did I hear you right?
No, high amounts.
Oh, high
of
amounts.
those.
Okay, so good. I'm glad I heard you right.
Glad we clarified that. I feel like I was like, this means high, this means low.
I was watching the chat here.
That's all right.
So tell me, what kind of foods then? It seems like I should be eating foods that has potassium, magnesium, and calcium in it.
Thank you. Just think lots of If you're saying
I'm good at
a lot in your diet, you're really good at anyway.
Yeah, I'm really good.
So magnesium is in your beans, your nuts and your seeds, your dark leafy greens. Potassium is rich in things like avocado, potatoes, sweet potatoes. What's another really good source that just flew out of my brain? Even something like coconut water has got huge amounts of potassium. Oranges have potassium, and then calcium are in other of those dark leafy greens as well. So as long as you're getting a sufficient amount of vegetables, which seem to be very deficient in the American diet, that may help to offset that balance of sodium and other minerals that help to keep your blood sugar in check. So that is point number 2.
I'm so glad to hear about nuts and avocado. Like, those are so great.
And they're already in your diet.
Yes.
So your blood pressure is probably all right.
Yeah, I think it probably is.
Yeah. So we're doing a good job here.
Nice.
I'm going to move on to point number 3.
Here we go.
Are you ready? Oh, look, it's just magically appearing. Point number 3 is alternatives, because the fact is most Americans are getting more salt or more sodium than they need. And likely that it's coming from these processed foods, or by adding, 3 extra tablespoons to your pasta dish at night. So what I wanted to discuss tonight are alternatives, delicious, nutritious, fabulous, tasty alternatives that you can add to your food. The important thing is to be a detective, to determine how much sodium are you even getting right now. I want to point out a few condiments that are commonly used. Here is some soy sauce. People might use this on their stir fry. They have it on their sushi. Maybe they throw it into, a salad dressing. So what's your guess on what one serving of a tablespoon of soy sauce would contain on the sodium front? What do you think?
It's pretty salty, and I'm so terrible with the milligrams.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna say about 20.
20, really?
Yeah.
Try 730 milligrams.
Nah.
Yes, 20. That was very low. Very low. 730 milligrams. So if you're shooting for something like that, 2,300 milligrams, you already got a third of the way there.
That says reduced sodium too.
I know, and it's
That's
still
crazy.
actually, which means that a regular tablespoon of this is even higher.
Wow.
So you got to look at your labels. So here's something else. Here's a sriracha sauce. Love the sriracha.
Sriracha.
Makes me want to dance. But you look at the back of this, and how many milligrams of sodium in this?
200.
20!
Really?
20 milligrams.
Oh, wow.
But here's the key. You got to look at the serving size. That serving size was a tablespoon. This is a teaspoon. So there's 3 teaspoons in a
Tricky.
tablespoon. Very tricky. So you might actually have more than 20, but still pretty low milligrams of sodium. The other one you think about are, sauces. Sometimes you find these processed sauces and you think like, oh boy, it's going to be pretty high in sodium. This is a satay peanut sauce, and this actually has per serving, 95 milligrams per serving. And then you go, oh, that's not bad, 95 milligrams, right? That's not bad, not too much. But then you look at the serving size, which is 1 tablespoon. I can guarantee you, for satay peanut sauce, you're going to have more than 1 tablespoon. You're going to have like a fourth of a cup. So
Right.
in reality, this is more like 400 milligrams of sodium. So you need to be a detective to figure out how much sodium you're even getting in your diet.
Can you you're saying all these numbers. I think you said maxing out at, you should no more than 600 milligrams a day. Is that what you said?
No, boy, 2,300 milligrams per day is the recommended amount, but actually people are becoming more liberal about that amount because it's looking like that isn't actually necessarily the best recommendation for everybody. People do need salt in their diet, but they need to make sure they're having enough magnesium and potassium and calcium. Remember that piece?
Yes, I do.
Okay, are you with me?
I'm totally with
So
you.
it's more like 600 milligrams per meal.
Okay, I told you I was bad with numbers.
Yeah,
So.
but you're getting better. I feel like the learning curve is improving.
Okay.
The other thing that I think people often get confused about is they use the whole canned bean thing and the sodium content as an excuse to not eat beans. Well, people, let me tell you, now not all canned beans are low in sodium, but not all are high in sodium. This is one brand, and this has about 85 milligrams of sodium per serving, about a half a cup. But here's what you can do, folks. You can rinse your beans. That helps to remove some of the sodium.
Yeah, brilliant.
Easy,
Just
brilliant.
pour all that stuff out.
Just pour it out.
Yeah.
Pour it out. So get rid of it. So those are a few tips and tools for understanding how much sodium is in your diet. Now, I want to get to some good stuff. Some of those condiments that I love.
You've got a bunch of them all sitting out here on the counter.
I do. I hope it's not going to be too overwhelming. I got a little excited and overzealous. But one I'm going to bring out is nutritional yeast, which you may have associated with hippies from the 1970s. But don't do that. Let's reclaim the nutritional yeast. Fantastic on top of popcorn, on top of vegetables, on top of grains.
I love that stuff.
Sometimes I just take a spoonful of it and shove it in my mouth.
It's cheesy.
It's super cheesy.
Yeah.
It's got that what is known as umami flavor.
Umami.
Which is like Parmesan cheese. Keith, I want you to take a guess at how many milligrams of sodium this
God.
has. I'm sorry to put you on the spot again.
20.
0.
Really?
Really?
No.
No, I'm serious.
Huh.
0 milligrams of sodium.
Wow.
I know. It's impressive. And it's flavorful. So you don't necessarily always need salt to flavor your food.
I'm going to put that on everything.
You're going to start drinking it.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So remember, it's okay to have a little bit of salt. It may just be about moderating the amount of salt and combining it with other flavors if you feel like you need to. And here's another condiment that's perfect for doing that. You ready?
All right.
This is called gomasio. Gomasio.
Gomasio.
It is a Japanese condiment which uses sesame seeds with some sea salt, and very often they add something else. This happens to add a touch of seaweed. So something like this, it does have some salt in it, and so it's got a wonderful salty flavor, but you've also got these toasted sesame seeds, which are enormously tasty in your mouth. So something like this, again, this will have, my gosh, I'm totally 47 here, 80 milligrams of sodium per serving, and one serving is about a tablespoon. So actually 1 teaspoon, I apologize. So you're still getting some flavor, but you're getting less sodium than you would if you were to take a teaspoon of salt, which would be 2,000 milligrams of sodium. So that's another option.
I think I need to use that one more, just so I can say that word more.
Gomasio?
Gomasio.
It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Go on.
Cheers to the Japanese for creating that. And then there's, of course, things like your herbs and your spices. So your smoked paprika, your chili powder. These almost never have any sodium in them. But what do they have? Flavor, my friends. I said flavor.
Flavor.
So if you want flavor but not sodium, it's time to grab some spices and start experimenting. There's more. There's cinnamon. There's harissa spices. This is where your tongue needs a new adventure. So take it on a roller coaster ride of herbs and spices and make friends with these. Sometimes the fresh herbs are wonderful too because they have such a pungent flavor about them. Here's a little bit of mint. Here's some rosemary. Oh God, oregano. This doesn't mean you cannot have salt alongside these, but you will need less salt if you have more flavorful herbs and spices in the mix, and that can help everything.
Such a good point.
Lastly.
Oh, okay.
Mustards. I told you, there's a lot more. But
You made this gesture like that was your big finale.
You're right. It did feel final. I apologize, but I do have one more thing.
Okay.
Which is mustards and vinegars.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful way to flavor things. This happens to just be a horseradish mustard, about 80 milligrams again of sodium per serving. This is a wonderful coconut balsamic vinegar, and this is something called umeboshi plum vinegar, which actually is rather salty. But when we experiment with flavors, we teach and train our taste buds to move in a different direction so we don't crave the salt quite so much. And that is its own little fun food adventure.
Do you have another finale gesture?
I would throw this up in the air, but I think it might break.
Okay. This is the Q&A section. So please, if you have any questions at all, be it light, deep, fun, or serious, put it into the chat window right now, and we'll do our best to answer it. Now, I'm really getting, I think for the first time, the idea of like adding these others. When we're having a meal, Mary, my go-to spice is the salt.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I think this needs a little salt, and I just add it. And you're making me think, actually.
Really?
You're making me think twice about putting some other spice in there first, and maybe it still does need salt, but not as much salt. That's what I heard you say.
Yeah, and I mean, I love salt. Salt on top of an avocado makes an avocado better.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's just the amount. It is not about completely removing salt from the diet. It is about adding it as a brief little twinge of flavor agency, but not necessarily taking over the meal so that your meal tastes like salt.
Here's a question.
Yes.
You seem to be a big fan of sea salt,
Yes.
and I've never understood why.
Well, the reason why is because when you look at sea salt, is it white? Usually, sea salt has some pinkness to it. Pinkness and grayness. And what do those colors denote? Additional minerals. So when salt has been super duper processed and made into just a white, pure, sandy, grainy thing, it's lost the mineral content that comes naturally from the sea. Salt water is also replete with others minerals that are beneficial for your body. So while sea salt often costs more, you often will use less because it has more buoyant flavor.
Interesting.
Thus the love for the sea salt.
Buoyant flavor.
Buoyant
There's a
flavor.
question that has come in from
Please.
chat. Thad asks, does it make a difference if you drink a lot of water while eating salty foods?
Yes. So your body's mechanism for thirst is going to kick in when you have a high salt content food. So you automatically will be thirsty as a result. I'm assuming the question is like is that
I think
gonna
will it help?
I think
maybe.
it can. It depends on how much salt, because remember, you're still putting extra strain on your kidneys to try and make that balance. Your body is in this constant orchestration of trying to stay in balance. And so when we add extra salt to the body and the bloodstream, it gets confused, and it's like, gosh, I need to fix this imbalance, because there's this very, very delicate dance of the salt outside of the cell and inside of the cell, and they're constantly communicating, and they talk to the brain and talk to the kidney. So I think that's probably a good option, is to have more water while you're having more salt. But the idea is to not have too much salt in the first place.
Okay. Thanks for that question, Thad.
Thank you, Thad.
Let's have a recap of our main course.
All right, main course. Salt is a necessary part of human life. We do need it. The idea is to not have too much of it. And if you do have high blood pressure and are genetically predisposed to salt affecting your blood pressure, that needs to be something that you take care of. Additionally, it's important to increase the amount of minerals in your diet to offset the effects of high sodium, calcium, magnesium, and potassium, to be specific. And then don't be afraid of experimenting with a variety of condiments and new flavors to offset the amount of sodium that's usually in your diet.
Okay, and now for the weekly nutrition challenge.
Ooh, I bet you wonder what it's going to be about. Well, I'm going to tell you. It's going to be about those condiments that I was sharing with you earlier. My challenge to you is to test out one of the condiments that I chatted about tonight. Or go out to the store and buy your own new condiment with a serving size of sodium no more than 30 to 50 milligrams of salt per sodium per serving, and see how you like it.
Okay, try a salt alternative is the challenge.
And share with us. There's likely a million things out there, and we'd love to know more about them so we can promote them.
On that note, actually, Thad shared earlier that he also succeeded at the last week's weekly bean challenge.
Thad! Woohoo! You get chickpeas as well. We'll send these in the mail to you.
Okay, hey, if you appreciate the show, you can help us continue what we're doing by subscribing to the Mary Purdy YouTube channel and subscribing to Mary's Nutrition Show podcast, which is on iTunes or other podcast apps. Let us know what you would like to hear about and what you're thinking about. Visit us at marypurdy.co. That's Mary Purdy, Purdy.co. C-O. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks for joining the conversation. And thank you, Mary, as always, for that awesome information that you bring us.
Thank you, Keith, for keeping it real with all of your numbers and
Lots
your
of
milligrams. It was great.
You definitely want to join us next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific. And why?
Well, as a compliment to our salty episode, we're going to be talking about water and alternatives for this lovely fluid. What am I drinking right now? Oh, well, I guess you're just going to have to tune in and find out next week. Woo! And with that, I'm going to take a big sip of it.
We'll see you next week, everyone. Let's roll the credits. This show was produced by Keith Hitchcock and Hocus Focus Media.
And now my credits. This show is intended for information and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to replace or substitute professional health advice or care and should not be used for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease. Please consult your physician or registered dietitian before following any advice contained here. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've learned associated with this show. The opinions expressed on this show are those exclusively of Mary Purdy, the show staff, and guests, and do not necessarily represent the views or policies of Arivale, Bastyr, dietitians in Integrative and Functional Medicine, or other entities. Farewell. Thank you for tuning in. Hey!
Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.